Hi, I'm Jared. This is my third video. I think it should have gone up a couple days ago, but sorry about that. So anyhow, um, I'm here to talk about the module two discussion questions, and I want to start off with the first question, obviously, because it is the most important. So the first question says, pick two information processing theories or models discussed in chapter 9 and explain how they're reflected in literacy, instruction, and research. So the first one I chose was the one I did my bottom up model theory paper on, and that was Go's model. I wrote down a couple of bullet points just because Go's model is very, very, very detailed, and I think that's the first part that interested me in general was because it was so detailed and because it was so interesting, and you have to really understand the inner machinations of the theory to apply it, and I tried to apply it in my classroom, and whether it works or not, I'm not sure. Um, I would also say that not only does it address broad ideas such as decoding, it also gets very specific, such as this thing called TPWSGWTAU. Now, when I heard that, I was very, very, very confused. TPWSGWTAU. The place where sentences go when they're understood. Yes. It's very specific. I think that it brings to the forefront our the way that our students are comprehending things, which goes back to literacy, instruction, and research. We have to make sure that we're being thorough and making sure that when we do have reading concepts and when we do have different reading material, that our students are actually comprehending the sentences that they're reading and writing, and making sure that they do have not just a basic understanding, but a more a much deeper level of understanding with that. Um, I think that in my class we use Go's model uh, almost as it was defined in the textbook. In the textbook, it said that one teacher uses it to show where her students are in the reading process, and because I do teach in a class with students who have been diagnosed with severe and profound intellectual disabilities. Um, my students usually cannot read, and by usually I mean they cannot. And uh, with that, I think that Go's model really actually does work to show specifically where are they getting tripped up. What is it that in their mind, if they can read a word and say a word, then uh, where are they getting tripped up? Where is it the decoding of the word that doesn't make sense to them? Is it the comprehension of the entire sentence? Where are we getting caught up? Because there's a bunch of different sections. I think the librarian is a really cool part of Go's model. Let me read this to you really quick. The librarian, because I remember it's one of my favorite parts, where the meaning of the word occurs. So inside Go's model, there's a bunch of other smaller parts. The librarian is where where the words go, um, to attach meaning to them, and I think that is so important. And I think that's honestly where my students struggle the most. Um, they struggle where they're not putting a meaning to the word. They may be able to say the word, but when you ask them questions or ask them the same question in a different way, they'll answer the question differently. So I think that shows how it's reflected, how Ghost model is reflected. Um, then I chose automatic processing, which I don't have as good of a, idea of, but I did pick this up from reading the textbook and looking up a little bit of my own, uh, a little bit of my own research. Um, I think it very interesting, by the way. It's very interesting because it brings attention to the forefront of the reading process, which I think can be easily overlooked. Uh, as teachers, we kind of zone out when it comes to reading because it's an easy process for us. But we have to remember that our students are still learning to read. So they might get a little frustrated when they can't do it. So their attention may not be on reading anymore. When we're reading a story, they may get frustrated and be like, you know what, whatever, I'm done. So they're done. And they're not paying attention. But this theory brings into effect that we have to pay attention to that. We have to remember that our students have to pay attention for them to actually learn. And I'd say that in the textbook, it talked about how this theory relies heavily on the concept of decoding and comprehension. Now, that is probably where it's reflected in literacy instruction and research the most, is through decoding and comprehension. We have to make sure that, like, where our students are is understood for us as well as for them. Where are they struggling? And I thought this quote was very interesting. It says, automaticity theory suggests that the possible reason for the student's problem is that the decoding requires so much attention that it interferes with comprehension. Our students may be working so hard on one concept that they're getting sidetracked and not going to the rest of the process, which is where we come in. We come in where we say, okay, this is where you're struggling. Let me help you. Let me show you where you need to go. And for the second question is, what effective literacy strategies can be utilized to enhance literacy achievement for culturally and linguistically diverse students? What I found in my classroom is to give the students culturally relevant topics to read and respond to, which honestly works anywhere. Representation is everything, and when students can see people or see things that represent themselves and their culture, they are more excited to read it. They're more interested in it. They pay more attention to it and put more effort into what they're doing. So if we're to give them either a book about music or a book about Benjamin Franklin, 9 times out of 10, I don't know about you, but I'm going to pick music. I also think that it's important to not stifle their creativity. I think as teachers, sometimes we get a little snooty, if that's the word I'll use. Snooty in the way that we mill over our students' work. We don't want them to take it as a joke almost. So we are overbearing. So we stifle a lot of creativity that could have been great. And also I said, teach them that there's no proper or precise way to speak because according to sociolinguistics, the way people speak is cultural. So teach them that although there is not a technically like proper, like you don't have to speak a certain way, there is a linguistically, there are linguistic rules that will help you in your process of reading and speaking and stuff like that. Thank you. I hope you could have followed along with this. I'm so sorry if you couldn't.